Cancer loves acid. So what has an acid effect?
Before we dive in, it's important to understand that diet plays a crucial role in our health. Some foods can promote health, while others can contribute to disease. Barbara O'Neill, a naturopath and nutritionist, has shared invaluable insights on this topic. Let's uncover the 8 foods that you should steer clear of to keep those cancer cells at bay. Since we've already covered the 7 alkaline foods we should include in our diet, let's now dive into the 8 acid-forming foods we should avoid.
Let's have a look at acid-forming foods now. These acid-forming foods are high in the acid-forming minerals, which is phosphorus, sulfur, and chlorine.
Let's first know the importance of our body's pH balance. Our body, especially our blood, needs to maintain a slightly alkaline pH level, ideally between 7.35 and 7.45. This balance is key for optimal immune function and protection against diseases, including cancer.
At one end, we have acid, and up the other end of the acid-alkaline scale, we have alkaline. And in the middle, we've got neutral. Neutral is neither acid nor alkaline. So the acid scale, it's 0, alkaline, it's 14, and in the middle, 7 is neutral. The pH of the human body is important because at different pHs, diseases grow, and at different pHs, it's very hard for disease to grow. But in a cellular pH of 5.5, this is where disease thrives, especially yeast, funguses, and cancer. Cancer loves acid. Cancer also loves no oxygen. The other thing cancer loves is sugar. So these are the 3 common denominators I find. And so when people come to us wanting help to conquer cancer, you see what we do? We suggest a diet that's highly alkalizing. We suggest ways to oxygenate the body. And we also greatly eliminate the glucose, the sugars going into the body.
First food is well known for us, which is refined sugar.
Refined sugar, it's very acid-forming.
While sugar itself is pH neutral at around 7, it's considered an acid-forming food because of how it affects the body's pH balance during metabolism. When you consume sugar, it's primarily metabolized by the liver, producing byproducts like lactic acid and acetic acid, which increase the body's acid load. Second food is meat.
So what foods are high in phosphorus, sulfur, and chlorine? Meat. This explains why Dr. Colin Campbell found he could turn cancer cells on and off like a switch by the amount of meat and dairy products he was giving the rats.
Red meat and processed meats are among the most common acidic foods in Western diets. Examples include beef, lamb, pork, sausages, bacon, ham, and corned beef. Consuming large quantities of red meat has been linked to an increased risk of certain cancers, such as colorectal cancer. Processed meats contain nitrates and nitrites, which can form carcinogenic compounds in the body. These foods are high in protein and phosphorus, which can increase the acidity in your diet. Third one is aged cheese.
Aged cheese? What's the blue in the blue vein cheese? The blue in the blue vein cheese is mold. So the only cheeses that don't sit under that category, the cheeses that have probably a pH of 7 would be your fresh. So that's your cottage, your ricotta. I'm not saying that they are okay, because usually they come from cows who have not been fed right or have chemicals in them. But on the pH scale, they're not as acid.
Dairy products are often considered acid-forming foods. This classification is based on the concept of potential renal acid load, which is PRAL, which measures the acid or alkaline effect of food on the body after digestion and metabolism. Foods high in protein and phosphorus, like dairy products, tend to be acid-forming. When these foods are metabolized, they produce acidic compounds that the body must neutralize or excrete, leading to a higher acid load on the kidneys. Here are some examples of how common dairy products are classified in terms of their acid-forming potential. Milk, slightly acid-forming. Cheese, moderately to strongly acid-forming, depending on the type. Yogurt, slightly acid-forming. It's important to note that the acid-forming or alkaline-forming properties of food do not necessarily indicate their health benefits or drawbacks. A balanced diet that includes both acid-forming and alkaline-forming foods is typically recommended for overall health. Another one is alcohol.
Alcohol is not a food, but it creates an acid environment in the body. Tobacco is not a food, but it also creates an acid environment in the body. Alcohol breaks down in the body to acetaldehyde, and acetaldehyde is a neurotoxin. We don't want a neurotoxin. A neurotoxin is a brain killer.
Fifth food on the list is hybridized wheat. Since wheat is such a big part of our diet, let's dive into the real issue. What's the difference between hybridized wheat and regular wheat?
Spelt and kamut are wild hybrids of the original wheat. So let me give you the wheat story. The original wheat that God made is called Enkenhorn, or some call it just Enkhorn. And that original wheat had a very fragile protein or gluten structure. It is not sure when, but they estimate a couple of 1,000 years ago, Enkenhorn did a wild hybrid with a field grass and came up with the Emma strain of wheat. Its structure, its protein or gluten structure is not as fragile, but it's still fairly fragile. And in the 1950s, it was the Emma strain of wheat that was put through intensive crossbreeding, and it came up with the hybridized wheat that we know today. That hybridization of the wheat created an incredibly complex hybridized wheat. The hybridization of the wheat created a lot more of the acid-forming minerals, gluten or protein structure. Today, we're looking at how the hybridization process changed the gluten or the protein structure, and it's almost only a cast iron gut that can break down that very complex protein or gluten structure. That explains why so many people are gluten intolerant today. You look at the timeline. So it was the 1950s that the wheat was hybridized. It was the 1970s that it went worldwide. So by the 1990s, every pasta, every pizza, every biscuit, cake, cookie, donut, cereal, bread, it's all made out of the hybridized wheat. You see, the farmers love it, and I don't blame them for loving it because they get 6 times more grain per acre. Who wouldn't like that? It was zoomed through to help with the starvation crisis in the world, and safety studies were never done.
Sixth one on the list is grains.
All your other grains, other than the grains that sit on the alkaline side.
Seventh one on the list is legumes and nuts.
All your other legumes, other than the lima, lentil and soy. And all your other nuts, other than the almond and Brazil, have an acid effect.
8 on the list is nuts.
All your other nuts, other than the almond and Brazil, have an acid effect.
Last one on the list is caffeine.
Caffeine, all your caffeine foods and drinks have an acid effect. And of course, caffeine usually comes hand in hand with the sugar, which certainly ups it. And remember our 2.6 Coca-Cola, that's a combination of the caffeine and the sugar.
A diet that's heavy in acidic foods like animal protein, caffeine, and processed items can strain the body's systems that work to maintain pH balance. This extra effort can deplete the body of essential alkaline minerals such as sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. Over time, this can make a person more susceptible to chronic and degenerative diseases. Therefore, it's important to consume these foods in moderation.
2.6. This is where Coca-Cola sits. It's a killer. It's toxic.
Should you eliminate all acid-forming foods from your diet? The good news is, you don't have to avoid them completely.
Maintain the 6.5 environment. We need to be consuming 20% acid-forming foods and 70 to 80% alkaline-forming foods. And I'm sure you're not surprised to hear me say that the 20% should come from this section here. Yes, oatmeal is here. Yes, rice is here. They're not bad grains. We need a little acid. Yes, your chickpeas are here and your garbanzos, your chickpeas, your black-eyed beans, your kidney beans. They're not bad. Of course they're not bad. We need a little acid.
If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more health tips and insights. Stay healthy and see you next time.